one sec here. I'm trying to... This is a series of videos I intend to upload through live stream of me pulling out a few of my projects that I have currently sitting around and hoping to assist you all in the servicing and repairing of your typewriters if you don't intend to have it done professionally, which of course, sorry, I'm trying to get this focused in such a way you can see it, and it's not going very well. Hold on. There we go, that's a little better. Give me a sec. All right, so I've got a stronger light bulb in here, and then I've got in my lamp, so let me just quickly change that out for better lighting. I should have done this before I started. There we go. Okay, skip across this part. Let's get started on the video. So, what we're going to be working today is this. It is a 1959 Smith Corona Super Typewriter in what's called Sapphire Gray. I've had this machine for a couple of years kicking around, and I've never actually taken it out and worked on it. So I picked it up, I think, from Value Village years ago for 20 bucks. I believe the Sapphire Gray Super Series model that came with the striped cover was only sold on Canadian markets. I believe in the United States it was sold as a Super Silent or Silent Super. In general, these machines are excellent typewriters. I find a lot of times that these machines have been used heavily and then require quite a bit of intervention to bring them back. This particular example seems to be in okay shape. As far as corrosion is concerned, I see none first glance. I'll have to have a closer look. There's a bit of, unfortunately, some wear here on the ribbon cover, which is caused by what appears to be either a loose or broken carriage return lever. So I'll have to figure that out. That's someone who's been using this machine without repairing a clearly significant issue. As you can see, it's very loose. The carriage escapement sounds a bit raspy at lower speeds. So I want to figure out what the issue is there. And then aside from that, it has the oxidation on the keys. It's an off-gassing from old plastic that turns into a white powder and subsequently covers everything. It smells like stinky feet. It's not very pleasant. However, it being a less common color combination and it being in relatively okay condition, I've opted to buy it and see what I could make of it. So, and it of course comes with Smith Corona's handsome carrying case, which is in about the same shape as the machine. The lock needs some oil. Anyways, there is a range of tools that I would recommend you use when you start working on these machines. You need some fine screwdrivers, smaller tips, some picks, pliers, more picks. I've got a bottle of isopropyl alcohol that will be put to use. And I'm still setting up my shop here, so as you can see, it is a bit amateur. I don't have a proper workbench or anything like that to do these videos, which I hope to change in the near future. So first thing I'm going to do is take it out of the case. Now, in case you have one of these typewriters that has this bracketry in the bottom of it to hold it in place, it has a neat feature, and I'm not sure entirely. I think it was to purpose the bottom tray for supplies if you were out and about. But if you, there's a clip here on the bottom, has a little tab here on the side. If you squeeze that, this bracket comes right out. And then you want to put it back in. Make sure these little pawls here go back into their slot, the back of the case, like this. And then just lower, click it in place. And there you have it. Anyway, the case does need a bit of work as well. The whole machine needs to be cleaned. I don't intend to do this is not a restoration video. This is a servicing video. So essentially what I do is I bring these machines back to their prime mechanical condition in order for so they can be put back to use. But anything like cosmetic wear and such, the only thing I can do is clean it and polish it and see if it brings it back. But that's a matter of seeing. Usually what I do with these crinkle finish machines, and I'll show you that process, is I hand wash them. So I take all the panels off, which we're going to do, and then I use dish liquid, essentially, which is a very soft detergent that you can use on these machines if you don't use something too abrasive to clean it off. And it actually revives the crinkle finish paint without damaging the texture. In this case, there's already plenty of damage. There's a scratch here at the bottom, here at the top. There's whiteout markings all over this machine. Anyways, these videos, this is a video series. I might have to cut this video and continue on at a later time because these servicing these machines usually takes a couple of days, at least definitely a few hours. And it remains to be seen how much time I can dedicate to it in this video, and then I will continue on tomorrow and so on. But essentially, you're sitting here watching the entire process as I service these machines, and then we'll upload the content to the channel after they're done. Anyways, first things first, I have to grab a few things. I use these little galvanized, these are from IKEA. They're little galvanized pots. I think they use them for planters, but I use them for parts as well. Let's see. And these are definitely helpful. These are 3 different types of brushes. You got brass. I think this is aluminum, and then just plastic. And then I've used 3-in-1 oil, but that's a spray bottle, so I might not use it. And then there's brass polish, and you can use any kind of brass or copper finish or nickel plating polish or something along those lines. Like I said, you want to get some small-headed screwdrivers. You're going to mostly want to use flatheads. If you have anything that's Japanese made, I believe they have some Phillips heads in there, like Brother or Silver Psycho. Needle nose pliers. A couple of polishing rags. These microfiber cloths that you get from Costco, they do just fine. And then these are like those polishing rags that come in a box, also from Costco. And this one looks absolutely manky, but it's actually being washed. It just doesn't come out anymore. But that will do is fine. And then also get yourself shop rags. You go through a lot of these if you're going... Well, I tend to repurpose them as much as I can, but essentially you go through half a roll per machine if you really get into it. I forgot, this is not isopropyl alcohol. This is acetone. This is isopropyl alcohol. These 2 things are very different. So this is, if you really have a lot, this essentially acts like brake clean on cars. It is very strong stuff that will damage plastics, that will damage paints. This is a last resort type of deal. The gram does not come off the metal. Isopropyl alcohol, you still don't want to get it on paint. You still don't want to get it on any synthetic parts. But this is a favorite of mine to get to in very small quantities to clean Typewriter the mechanisms in typewriters with. You can also use mineral spirits. I've seen people use lighter fluids. Lighter fluid is very fumy. You got to use that in open spaces. Also isopropyl alcohol. I've got my window cracked just a little bit. Luckily the weather is now nice enough that I can do that. And then I forgot something important. You're going to go through a lot of these. There you go, cotton swabs. You'll want to use those as well. So I'm not sure I'm going to put everything here, but normally I have a little vacuum that's a USB plug-in, but I have nothing to plug it in here. So, and since I moved last year, I got rid of half my tools, including my air compressor. But I'm in the process of rebuilding my collection of tools and such to do this. Anyways. First things first, what we're going to do is we're going to take apart the case, or the casing around it. So we'll have a look here. Now these Smith Coronas, if you have a look here, that's the inside. I hope the lighting is sufficient. I'll have to look back on this video at some point and see if I can improve that to some extent. However, Smith Corona Supers, anything 5 series, most Smith Corona portables going from the 1930s onwards have their mounting points in the same spaces. So if you have anything like a Classic 12, anything Super 5, which is this, Sterling, Silent, Super, anything, the mounting points on these machines for the encasings are usually in the same spot. They start here at the bottom. So there's one here. One here, and then there is one here, and there is one here. There's rubber grommets that hold those in place, and 50-50 chance that you start unscrewing these and the rubber completely disintegrates. The screw heads are big enough that the casing will not pop out of place if they're there, but what you can do if you're really paranoid, if these fall apart on you, is use washers. And then other mounting points, they're here in the back. So there's one on each side here and on the other side here. You undo that and they're slightly stuck into, and then there's tabs underneath the carriage rack that hold this in place. This will take off the top cover. And then there is a screw here and on the same side on the other side. And there's 2 on the bottom here and they'll take off the back panel. And then you'll have a bare machine. So let's get started with that. Oh, right, and then there's a mounting screw here and a mounting screw here for the side encasing. You want to take that off as well. Now, I know my way around these machines. I'm not going to specifically note where each screw comes from, but if you haven't worked on one of these machines before, or you're not as confident as me when it comes to tinkering on typewriters, make sure that you mark where screws come from, and of course, if you're left with one at the end of your service after repairing a typewriter, that means there's a point somewhere where something is not attached. So you want to make sure that you deal with that properly. Removing the body on typewriters is not essential on every service, but when it has been a long time, and there is traces of eraser shavings on these machines, I do like to take them apart so there's easier access to the mechanism. Now, it depends on what the issues are with these machines. Typewriters in general, the biggest and hardest thing to do, really, is taking apart the carriage, especially if you have ball bearing carriages. Some machines don't have those. Underwood standards from the early 20th century didn't have ball bearings. They had roller bearings, but these machines have ball bearings, and they have a guide, but even then they can just come right out. And if those start flying, chances of you getting that in place again, you can do it. It's very tedious work. Depends on how deep you want to get into a machine. Okay, so with those 2 screws here in the back taken off, this cover should pop out of place. Now sometimes you'll find that the tabs have gotten stuck a little bit. Did I forget a couple of screws? I did, actually. Hold on a second. Forgot about those. There's a screw here and another screw on the other side. You have to take those out too. So make sure that you remove those. I service so many. I have serviced so many machines. I don't always remember all the detail, the layout of these typewriters. However, that should do it. So turn them back around, and then the cover should come out. Just be gentle with it because there is a tab on either side that sticks underneath the carriage rack, and you want to gently pull those out. There we go. And there's the lid. Now, I'm seeing a problem here where the space bar is getting stuck under the casing, and I haven't removed enough screws for that to move yet, so we'll have to see if there's any damage to the structure of the machine, or if the space bar is just out of alignment. But this getting stuck here, as you see, that's something we'll have to rectify later on. And these machines have a frame all the way around underneath, all the way around underneath the casing. So what we're going to do now is take out these 4 screws at the bottom of the machine. And again, if you're not familiar with where every single screw comes from, write down or put them in a designated space so you know where to put what where when you're putting it back together. I remember this because I've done it a lot. Zoom out a little bit for you so you have a better view. There we go. Having worked on these machines for as long as I have, I do find that they tend to have, they're prone to corrosion, and as far as I can see, I see some signs, especially over by the key lever comb here at the top, and around the bell mount area, there's some rust, but very minimal, which is good. As before mentioned, there's 2 screws at the bottom of the back plate, one here, one here. You want to take those off as well. I do not know why Smith Corona decided to install nickel-plated screws in the bottom, but they are distinctive and smaller than the ones that go around here. So you want to make sure that you take note of that. Okay. Now, all the bottom screws that I have to take out have been taken apart. There's 2 more screws to take apart here on the back. Oh, I already did that, so we're good there. Oh, and there is one, and it's a really weird one, right over there. You want to take that one out too. Well, I'll come back down. You'll see it here in a second. But it's right underneath. Small screwdriver for this. I lost my good one. I'm not sure where I put it. But I had a favorite, and of course, those are the ones you end up losing. So I'll use these smaller screwdrivers. And you don't need any special tools to work on typewriters if you're not doing this professionally. There are tools to make your life easier when you work on these machines. But I want to use tools as simple as possible because then people don't have to worry about outsourcing any of those. So the back panel should just pop off now that those screws are removed. And like I said, this has usually been on there for 60, 70 years, so it might not immediately come off, but mine just did. So anyway, that's the back panel. And you want to be careful when you do this because, of course, you've got crinkle finish paint all around this that scratches really easily. Even using an abrasive cleaning pad can damage the texture of this paint. And I've done it myself where I would use a solvent or I would be a little too aggressive with taking things apart and I end up kicking myself for it afterwards. There we go. There we go. Now that's the casing off. And you'll find in here, this machine has sound deadening material. This stuff is incredibly, it's trash, really. I never liked the sound deadening material that they used in Smith Coronas. There were some manufacturers that were even worse, and they used a spray type foam, and stuff would just turn into dust the moment you even touched it. There we go. Okay, so casing's off. The only thing that's left is here. We'll get to that in a little bit. So that doesn't have to come off immediately. This gives us the first insight into what condition the machine is in. These are areas where moisture can collect if this machine is sat in a damp area and tends to corrode out. If I run my finger over this and get rid of the dust, I'll find that if you look, you'll see some specks here. That is surface rust. It's very minor. Definitely nothing to be concerned over. Us cleaning this and lubricating the mechanism will be sufficient enough in order to just neutralize it. This machine clearly has sat in a damp environment, a garage, an attic, a basement. That has caused that. Very common. Now you want to take apart the platen on one of these, pop up your paper bill, push back the margin cover and the tab stop cover. There is a tab here on your left knob. Pull out like this. It will disengage, or it should, but the paw's broken on this one. It should disengage the platen. And there's a little bit, a small pawl over. Let's see if I can get that here. You see, right over there. You push that up like this. Very stiff. If you do that, I'll show you. You pull, your platen comes out like that. And this one has some marking on it, but it is still very pliable, which is good. Smith Corona platens usually don't tend to harden with age as much as some other brands. If you have an Imperial from this era, good luck with it. There you go, back on the focus point. Okay, so basket shift machine. It's full, absolutely full of eraser shavings. I'm not sure if you can see that. So what I like to do at this point is take apart the segment cover plate on these. There's two screws here on the front. You want to take those off. Okay, I need a better screwdriver. Take my long john here. Maybe put it in caps lock so that tight basket doesn't move up and down. And be careful when you put a lot of pressure or torque on these screwdrivers because they slip. You can damage paint or chrome, or you chew up the screw itself, which can be a headache in itself. So do your due diligence and maybe apply a little bit of oil if they're being very stubborn. Now, taking this off, okay, there's multiple parts to this. There's the front chrome plate, and there's a little clip. Now, see how this is seated? So it goes from the front or from the back to the front, like this. And then there's a third cover plate, or there's this plate, and that sits between the front segment chrome cover and the actual type bar segment. So this is the layout. Okay, the prongs for that little spring go between the front and the back mount, or however you'd like to call these. And we'll put that in the other one there. And again, I'm not sure what you can see, but it has quite a bit of eraser shavings. It's not too bad. Now, if you have an air compressor, take it outside, blow it out. Be careful with springs and such. Let's see what we do here. Now, these back covers, they are removable, but it is a bit of a headache. So, let's have a look here. Well, they pivot on, actually, if we undo this screw, no, maybe not. That's part of the, let's see here. There's two spring clips here at the bottom. I think you have to pry those loose. So, let's see if we can do that. Maybe not. Let's see. Where's the two screws here holding that in place? Yeah. Okay. If you have a look here, I don't know if you can see this. I don't know if I can show you that. There's a tiny screw over here and on the other side that is holding it in place. So we're going to get our fine screwdriver, which is a very fine tip flathead. Small like this, maybe even a smaller one. I've got two small ones. And that might just take off the back panel. We're going to give it a try. I don't think I ever bothered with it, but for the sake of this video, let me take it off. Let's see if I can find the right mounting screw. Where are you? There you are. Well, that's definitely it. Let's see. Is there a way to get the other spring clip off? Maybe. No. Actually, what we might do, and this is a little easier to explain, is that we have the paper table here. And if you have a look underneath, you'll find there's a mounting screw right there and right there. So if you undo those, and there's one more here in the back right there, you take those off, and that should come out. So we're going to do that first. Oh, and like expected, here is one of those rubber grommets holding on the bottom, the encasing of the machine. Just save them. If they're still whole, you can put them back in. If they're not, like I said, just use a rubber grommet or a washer. Anything to prevent the screw head from going through that mounting point. Now, a bit of a golden rule, and this again depends on the machine that you're working on. for aesthetic and cost effectiveness, if you want to have a bit of a trick of figuring out where a screw goes, I have not seen, or you hardly see, and it does happen. Usually, black or a darker color screw goes with a black or darker component, or inner workings of the machine, and the chrome or nickel plated screws go more on the outside because they're more of a visual thing. However, that doesn't always. Like for example, here we've got some black screws that go on a chrome plate on the bracket that holds the tension springs for each key lever. But yeah, you'll find that on the outside, such as here and here, you've got the nickel plated screws. But then if you look in the inner workings, you look at the rivet advance mechanism, screws are black. Now I said that's a very vague tip, but some manufacturers are more prone to doing that than others. There we go. And for example, this one, the side screws holding the paper table in place are chrome, and then the center screw is black. You're going to wiggle it a little bit because it is a bit of a pressure fit, and there we have it. So that's a piece you want to take off if you intend to go and deal with chemicals in this general area. And that gives us a better visual of what we need to take apart in order to take this back panel off. Now, let's see. Is that a clip? I think that's a clip. So there's two springs, and they are shaped like this. No, I can't. Hold on. Shaped like this. So essentially a U with little prongs on the side. They're very evident when you look in the back in each corner. And by the looks of it, these are held in place by force, not by a screw. So if I take my needle nose plier and I gently pull those up, it should go pop and come out. And it just did. So that's the one. And that's the other. Okay. There you go. And what you want to do is just flip them up so they don't get caught on the back plate. On the door, whatever you want to call it. Okay. Now, you can still open it only so far because it seems those brackets get in the way. Is that what it is? Are these pressure fits? Oh, maybe. Let's see here. Okay, hold on. Maybe those screws do not have to come out. Maybe. Like I said, I don't remember taking these apart in the past because I've never really done a thorough job of Smith Corona. By the 1950s and 60s, major players in the typewriter market started reconfiguring the mechanisms in their machines to be a bit more efficient when it came to manufacturing these. At which point they started having really weird, there we go, designs in some parts. And this should just pop off now. Let's see here. Yeah, it's gonna go pop here. So apparently those screws do not hold in place. You just have to wiggle your screwdriver in there and just work it a little bit. Just be gentle, be very gentle, because the thing is you don't want to break or bend anything or just... There we go. Pop, pop. There it is. Okay. Yeah, so these are the mounts that I'm talking about. You see these here? Those are the points of pivot, and they pivot on these tiny screws over here. Okay, so now we've got all the essential body panels off. One last thing I might want to take apart before we get into the mechanism, and this is one of those weird things I'm talking about, the pressure plate underneath the paper table that has the feed rollers and installed is, like I said, it's held in by two, I'd almost say pop rivets. They look like metal pillars that stick out the bottom, and they are tapered at the bottom so that they're held in place. And if you take off the spring tension, they flip around loose. If you tighten it, it's more in place, and that's to, of course, act as your paper release. I like to take that component out as a whole because a lot of dirt accumulates at the bottom underneath on the carriage, and it's hard to get underneath here. First things first, though, you want to take off the ruler so you don't scratch this trying to take it out. There's a screw here, and there's a screw here. In this case, make a visual image of where the ruler is located in relation to the screws. The reason I'm saying that is because the screws here are threaded through a hole that is wider than the actual screw, and that's to align the ruler with the typeface. And if you find that your ruler is out of alignment when you're like for example, if you look at the indicator here in the ribbon, between the ribbon vibrator, you'll be able to adjust the ruler accordingly so you have accurate representation of where the carriage is situated in relation to the page. So get yourself a small screwdriver again and take out those two little Phillips screws. And again, be careful because it's easy to slip and you just might gouge the ruler, and you don't want to do that. And these are tiny screws, so you'll know where those go back. There's not many of those. Although these later machines do have a larger variety of screw sizes and types than the earlier machines. If you take apart an Underwood 5 or something like that, the majority of the screws are exactly the same. Okay, you take out the ruler. There you go. Put that aside. And like I said, these are pressure fit. There's no screw that holds in place. If you look underneath the pressure plate here and here, you'll see there's two shafts poking through the bottom of the carriage, which essentially makes up the top carriage rail. And what you want to do, this is the way I've done it, and it's a bit of a harsh technique, but it does work, is you want to grab your screwdriver, you want to wedge it underneath on the inner side of that post, and just see if it pops out, and it should just pop out. And the other side is going to be a bit more tricky because without taking apart the clutch plate for the ratchet mechanism over here, you have to work your way around that as well. So inner side of the post is what I would do, and then just see if you can pop it out. If you're nervous about this, and actually, I guess I can show you how to do that. We could take apart. You know what? I'm going to take apart something before we take apart this. And the reason I'm saying that this is clearly buggered. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take apart the ratchet mechanism on this. And it is a bit of a process. So first things first. You've got this knob over here, and it's actually threaded on, and you want to take that off because you're going to have to take out the shaft that pushes into the platen in order to engage and disengage the clutch. Now, if you've got small wrenches, like really small wrenches, you might be able to do it with that, but let's see first if it just unscrews. This is wishful thinking. This has been on there for 70 years. Half the times it doesn't thread off. Let's see. Now, what I might do here could be a little bit frowned upon, but I'm going to use a cloth. Grab my pliers, put it on the inside of the shaft. And the reason I'm doing this, I don't want to scratch the ball there, and see if we can. Oh, that's on there. Okay. So this is a stage where you say, you know what, let's put a little oil on that, let it sit for a bit, work on something else. Hold on, let me try this. There is a little nut here, tiny nut. And that holds the cap on place. Maybe this is a way I can loosen it. Let's have a look. No. No. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab a little bit of oil. I've got some Singer sewing machine oil. Well, it says all-purpose oil, but we're going to just put a little dab on that nut. Just a little bit. There we go. Just let it sit. You're going to wipe it off later. Don't touch it because you'll get oil on your fingers, and then if you're trying to undo something else, headache. So just let that sit for now. And I will show you one more thing we're going to have to take off in order to protect. There's multiple things. Actually, what I want to do is I want to take off the space bar, and there is a cover plate here underneath the numerical keys that has the color selector indicator on it and such, and that is a painted part that I want to take off in order to protect it. And there's two screws, just two screws that are holding that in place. There's one over here underneath the backspace key stock, and then there's one here between the accent key and the margin release key. You'll see it. It should be, I think on all machines it is a black screw, unless it's an earlier Smith Corona. So if you've got a first generation 5 series, so that would be a brown one with green keys, or it's a all gray tone, gray keys and all that. Earlier one, I think they might be chrome, but in this case, they're black. So you want to undo those. You'll see that cover plate starting to loosen up. And then you've just got to shimmy it up. There we go. There's what we're talking about. You want to take that off because that's painted and crinkle finish. And of course, you've got your screws. And if you're any more inclined to be more organized than me, you mark where these come from. In my case, in that little pot they go. Looking at the key lever comb here, there is some surface rust and animal hair of some kind all throughout this machine. The rust is minimal. Now, again, with typewriters, you've got to keep in mind how big of a headache do you want this machine to become, like this project to become. One thing to keep in mind is that everything you take apart, you got to put back together, right? And half the time, that's way more work than it is to take it apart. So, the key lever comb, which sits here and guides the key levers, taking that off on half the machines out there is a pain because it's also used as a mounting point for multiple springs, and of course it keeps all the key levers in place. The moment you take that out, all your key levers will move side to side, and then getting that all realigned and reseated takes a lot of work. If it's absolutely dire that you take that out and service it, makes perfect sense. So that machine's where it's completely corroded out, and I take it out and I sand it and I paint it, put it back, and it looks good, right? Because that's half the work. But you first want to determine, is it worth it? Is it worth to take out that key lever comb if you're working on a machine you're not doing a full restoration on? If you're doing a full restoration, everything comes out. I've done that. I've taken all the components, all the key lever linkages, all the type bars. Actually, I might take the type bars out of this because it's, well, we'll see. It depends. Again, it depends how far you want to get into this. So I'm going to leave. Well, first what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look. I'm going to grab a brush, just an ordinary paintbrush you don't care about. I'm going to brush off all this dirt. All the dust and all the dog hair. Your big brush is too big for the hard to reach. Get yourself a smaller one. There you go. This machine has an odd smell. It's a combination of mothballs, cigarettes, and feet. That's what it smells like. It looks fine, honestly. There's a bit of blotching where there has been some corrosion over the years, but nothing that's going to visually interfere. What we're going to do is we're going to give it some treatment in a little bit when we're ready to. Well, we've taken everything we want to take apart and we're ready to start cleaning. I'll show you my way of dealing with that. But before we do that, I want to take off the space bar. The space bar, if you want to look in the bottom on these, I believe the earlier ones were screwed in place. Sorry. The earlier ones were screwed in place. These are pressure fitted. And that noise in the background is my cat. So, again, talk about headaches. How do you want to take this apart? That's the $64 question. I think the best thing to do is get yourself a very, very fine tip screwdriver. And you want to be careful what you're about to do next, okay? There is a gap between the bracket for the space bar and the dog leg before it goes flush against the bottom of it. And you can stick your screwdriver in there and carefully see if you can work it off. Now you've got to, again, you got to realize these space bars have been on here for 70 years plus. It's old plastic, and you got to think, is it worth the headache? Because the thing is, you snap a space bar, now you're out of a space bar. You got to go find another space bar. What we're going to do, actually, we're going to do something different. In order to get to that, is it worth it? No. You know what? I'm going to leave it alone. I'll explain you in case you want to do it and how to remove that space bar. A bit of oil might be your friend. You want to put a little oil over here where the bracket goes into the plastic, and you want to do the same on the other side. And for easier access, the front brace of the frame is screwed on instead of part of the whole assembly. There is 3 screws on either side, one here, one here, one here, and same on the other side. You undo those and you wiggle this front mount off, this cross member, and then you'll have more access to it. However, as it sits right now, I think I have enough. I can just go at it without taking this apart. You can, like I said, if you were doing a full restoration or you really want to get into this machine, you can pop every single key off. These are pressure fitted. There's no screw in the bottom, and there's no tab that holds it in place. They're literally just pressure fitted. But you got to realize, again, these are 70-year-old plastic keys. Chances of you cracking one or one crumbling, I give it 50-50. So, let's see. Anything else we need? Yes, actually, there are 2 more parts, I think, painted parts we want to take off before we start going at it with chemicals. There's a painted side cover here on this side, and there's another one in the area we're going to take apart as a whole. So first we're going to do this. There we go. There we go. So, tiny little crinkle finish painted part. You know, might as well preserve it and see if you can polish that up a little bit. The other side is on there a little differently. That's because, of course, the left-hand side of the carriage is assembled differently than the right-hand side carriage. It seems to have consumed the oil. So I want to try again and see if we can get this off. Is this reverse threaded? No, it's not. I don't think it's reverse threaded. I don't actually remember, so we're going to have to be careful working with this. Do I have any? I do not have any. I think if I have any wrenches that are small enough to take this apart. Let's see here. I have taken these apart before, but I just do not remember the course of action. Hold this in place here. I do not want to gouge this metal, so I'm going to try to be careful. There's, like I said, there's a nut here, and then there's the actual, I'll call it the button that's on top of this shaft, and this is a pressure fit. So I think the right way of doing this is that you, as it were, tighten the inner nut so it distances itself from this knob on the end, and then it should twist off. But of course, the downside is that you've got to be very careful because this is a exposed component. You do not want to mark up. So be very selective with the tools you use. Is that actually doing something? Can't actually tell. Oh. Yeah, that's not doing anything. Okay, I'm going to leave that on, see if I can take it apart without disassembling that, maybe. No, it has to come off. I wonder how broken this is too, because it's completely off. There's no mounting point anymore whatsoever. So I see a missing screw over here, and I have spare parts for this. If this is a broken lever, I have a spare lever, but that would mean a different video because I'll have to go get that at a different location. I also have additional screws. I don't have any parts here with me. I have a whole selection of spare typewriter parts that are all in storage right now. So it remains to be seen. Okay, I'm going to go and see if I can find the smallest monkey wrench I've got and see if that's going to do it. So, you hang tight. Okay. Found a 6-inch monkey wrench that bites. Actually, I want to loosen this, so we're going to put this on here. If I can get the angle right. Okay. There we go. Okay, she popped loose. All right. So, oh, hold on. She's a little stiff. Again, these components have been on here since it was new. I don't think this machine has had regular service for a long time. There we go. So because I moved the nut, the end cap, or the knob as it were, came right off. And then you want to take off the nut too, because the shaft has to go through the carriage knob. So you pull it out like this. There's the component, as you see. And this is of a hardened metal. Pliers, within reason, won't hurt it. So you don't have to worry about that. In order to not lose your parts, just screw it back together like this. And there you go. Looks like something you'd put through your nose. Put that with the faceplate for the segment, and now we're going to get into removing the knob. Now, if you have a look here, on the inside, you'll see multiple screws as you turn. There's 2 of them. Now you want to back those out, but you don't have to necessarily take those all the way out. And those hold the platen knob in place. So just loosen them up until it comes off the shaft. There you go. So there is your left-hand side carriage knob. Now we're going to get a greater insight into what the problem is here. First, you want to take off this cover plate here. It's painted. You want to protect it. There's 1 screw on the outside right over here. There it is. And then there's another one over here. And this is your ratchet release lever. So if I zoom in a little bit, it's right over there. You want to take that one out too. You might have to actually flip that switch so you have more room to work with. There we go. Because it gets in the way a little bit. There we go. Take out that screw. And there is the other cover plate. Trying to make this a bit more. Zoom on these YouTube live feeds are very touchy. Anyways, there we go. So now we're getting more into what the problem is with. Oh yeah. So hold on. There we go. Put these aside. I'll explain what those are in a second. Having a closer look at what the problem is with the carriage return lever, and by the looks of it, we have a closer look. There is a missing screw here and a missing screw here. So we're gonna have to get some screws. Okay, so it's missing 2 mounting screws for the carriage return lever. Now the parts that you just heard scrambling by, these are important, okay? You've got a ratchet release component here. This is the shaft that pin goes through, okay? That's normally threaded through on the square end is sitting on the inside and is threaded through the left end of the carriage. This here, and I'll show you how this is supposed to be seated. This sits in this position. And these are just the paper fingers in the way here. I'll just wedge those. This component, which is the Platen Advance Pawl, spring-loaded, is seated like this until there's a couple of rungs here, a couple of thicknesses of that shaft, and you want to seat it on the lip that is the same diameter as the hole in that bracket. And then there is, I'll give you a close-up when we're putting this back together, but there is a little roller bearing here, and that sits in a notch that's cut out in the bracket of the carriage return lever, and that's how it advances the platen. And then, of course, this right here is the outer clutch wheel and the advance ratchet. This is the gear with which the platen is advanced 1 or 2 or 3 spaces, and it uses a little pawl here, a catch that gets stuck on one of these teeth. Anyways, we'll put that aside. I'll give you a close-up on how to assemble that when we do so. However, we've now made way. What I'll do is just get rid of this here. This is only held on by the spring at this point. I don't know why these screws are missing. I have not taken these apart, and I don't see them anywhere. I'm not sure how those got dislodged, but it's only held in by a spring at this point. So what we're going to do is just pop that spring right out of there. And there's the return lever. So it's not broken, it's missing parts, and I will do an update on that. I have to go out and get the screws, so that will be for later. But we'll put that back together as well. Now, with that all removed, the pressure plate comes right out, and here it is. That's a pressure plate and your feed rollers. And I was right in thinking that was a good move because underneath it is filthy. So we're going to change and clean, or we're going to clean that all out. Essentially, this is the stage where I say we've taken off enough to get started. I go maybe a little further and we take off the dishes that the ribbon spools sit in, along with the carrier shafts, but those require you to take apart the parts of the ribbon advance. And doing that on these machines, you've got to mark where the gears are seated in order to pull out the carrier shafts. Maybe we'll get into that. I'll see how we go. I don't think it's necessary with this machine because of how clean it is, relatively speaking. Underneath the machine, it's not bad at all. It's mostly on top. People use, if they use corrosible bond, Eaton's paper, for example, and they use erasers to erase text on that page. It's a specialized stock that has a certain waxy substance on top of it. So the ink is not actually pressed onto the actual page, but there's a very, very thin film on that paper that allows you to use an eraser to get rid of typewriter ink. But of course, all those eraser shavings, and because, you know, the golden rule is you move the carriage over like this and then you erase so it doesn't fall in the mechanism. But nobody did that. Everybody just erased right where they had the carriage. And of course, that's how it all ends up in the segment and in the mechanism, and it just becomes a thick mess. And then if over time oil gets to it, it turns into a goopy, sticky substance. Sometimes it's even harder to the point you have to scrape it off the metal. Absolute pain in the ass, and I hate them for it. I really do. It's like liquid paper. Don't get anywhere near typewriters, even though it's advertised for machines. If you want whiteout, use this, for God's sakes. Don't use the powdery stuff. Don't use the little. I mean, let me give you an example of something that is absolutely horrendous for stuff that gets in typewriters. These were sold for the purpose of erasing text on typewriters. These are the mechanic's nightmare. This is a tape eraser by Dixon. I still have a couple new in the pack. They don't make them anymore. But essentially, if I can get a hold of it here, I might have to take it apart. Get it reseated. If you look inside, there's a roll of what looks like tape in there. And it is dry correcting tape on the inside. Okay, this stuff turns into dust, and more often than not, I find machines that are completely white on the inside because this was the writer's preference, and this stuff is a nightmare. If you ever come across it, don't use it. It's nice aesthetically. I like to put it with the machine in the case or something like that because it is authentic. But when it comes to cleaning typewriters that have this stuff in them, it's the devil's work, as they say. Yeah. So, first thing what we're going to do now is I just get a rag. And what you want to do is you want to get a rag and you want to get a big brush. Big brush, something like this. And you want to get rid of the loose particles first. Now, I don't really particularly care where they end up here because this is a bit of a workbench. So, I can blow it off later, but if you're, you can take it outside or something. You can use an air gun, or you can use keyboard cleaner or an air compressor to get this. I don't have any of those at my disposable right now, so I'm going to use a brush, and we're just going to start working those eraser shavings out of the machine. And yeah, like I said, I don't have any of the right tools to do this with right now, so it's a bit primitive, but we're just going to work it loose because it's been in there for sometimes decades. You can also use this brush. Old toothbrushes, save them. You can use them for cleaning typewriters. Make sure you get the toothpaste out of them. Just let them soak in hot water for a bit, and then you can use them. I save all my old toothbrushes for that purpose. But what I'm doing right now is just getting rid of the eraser shavings as much as I can. And like here, this, I think it's because this is what they call rifle bluing. It's a treatment they do to prevent corrosion, which doesn't actually work, and it gets stuck on the black components of this machine. For some reason, it's the texture that those metal parts have, but I find that it's way easier to get it off the nickel-plated or chrome-plated or just bare metal than it is to get it off the black ones. So sometimes it marks it even, and it's just a chemical reaction or it's corrosion that's caused by a buildup of eraser shavings. Moisture gets in there, traps the moisture, and then it's marked. That's it. So I'm not doing anything that's very detailed right now. I'm just running my brushes through the machine, getting rid of all the loose particles and dust and the cobwebs and the dog hair that's in this one. Just work it out as much as you can. Now you want to be careful, because if you go at it too hard, you can bend linkages, you can break or loosen springs, you can damage components. Like these long, there's, if you look here, a long connecting linkage right here, and you bend those really easily, and it will alter the functionality of the machine. This is for the tabulator. If you bend this, your tabulator will be partially engaged, and that can damage the escapement over a prolonged period of time, or it can cause the tabulator to malfunction. So those are things you don't want to bend, especially if it's not obvious, right? Now, I mentioned earlier that I might take out the type bars. I'm not going to do that. And the reason I'm not going to do that is, first of all, this machine is not dirty enough for me to warrant that process. Second of all, Smith Coronas, their linkages are clipped. They have a clip on the end of them. So if you look at them, they splice at the end like this, and there is a notch on one, or there's a little pin on one end of that linkage, and in the other spline is a hole through which that goes through, and that pin first goes through a type bar before it goes through the hole, and that's how it's or a key lever, and that's how it links those two components. But of course, that's a pain to take apart, and a pain even more to put back together. So I'm looking at this right now. I don't see significant signs of corrosion. The type bars should tell me that no WD-40 was poured into this segment. If that was the case, absolutely would have taken it apart. If you're working on one of these machines, do not use WD-40 unless it's for one specific purpose, and that is for rejuvenating external parts. I'll show you. If I have some WD-40, I'll show you what it can do with crinkle finish. It's amazing. Shouldn't be anywhere near the inner mechanism of a typewriter, though, because it's not a lubricant. It's in the name, water displacement. And it gums up a machine like you would not believe. So we continue on. Use old rags to wipe out all the dirt as much as you can. And what doesn't come off easily, that's where we're going to start using some isopropyl alcohol. And I'll have to find maybe I can use this and just put this somewhere else. You want to use a little jar or a little pot or something, you can just pour a little bit in, and that's how you start to work it into the machine. Use smaller brushes for the finer areas. This is big, the big important area where you find that people or where razor shavings end up absolute pain to get to. Working on the bottom of the machine. If you put it on its hinds, just make sure that nothing's getting Like some people put these upside down. I might put it upside down, but when you do, you gotta be careful that you're not pressing, like no components are getting compressed that shouldn't get compressed. And you'll find a lot of typewriters, if you're just using dry brushes, it already clears a lot of the mechanism because it's just loose particles. And that's not a bad thing, because the thing is, at the end of the day, you do not want to use too many chemicals with these machines, right? I mean, you do not you do not oil or lubricate a mechanism of a typewriter in the same way you would do with other machines. This is not a motor, so you don't have the whole thing doused in a lubricant. Quite the contrary, you want to use as little as possible. And the reason for that is because these machines are huge dust collectors, especially if they sit out exposed. These portables that have carrying cases that keeps the dust out, works fine. You got a standard, you've got to keep that in mind, because the thing is, if you don't, you use too much oil, you come back to that machine after a few months, you find the whole mechanism is gummed up, and then you're really in for it, because then you're going to have to take parts apart, components apart, like you didn't have to do before. And I've got tiny brushes. These are literally dollar store brushes. Go there and buy one of those 20-pack of brushes. They cost you $1, maybe $2. Still. I'll take this moment where there's not much happening and I want to thank you for watching this video. I'm aiming to be more active on this channel and provide more educative material to help you all with servicing your typewriter. I realize that in this day and age, it's not easy to find technicians with experience that have done this over a long period of time. I've been servicing typewriters now for 15 years and serviced thousands, I think by now, thousands of machines. I have serviced a lot of typewriters over that period of time. And, you know, through doing my own research and my own professional contacts that have been in business for years, educated myself on the proper procedures of working on these machines. And a lot of people are eager to learn, but there's going to be a lot of purists out there. If you're joining a community, there's going to be a lot of purists out there that will tell you that their way is the only way. And the truth is, that's not the case. There's a lot of different ways you can service a typewriter. I'm going to be one of those people that advocates different methods, and I'm eager for those that already service their typewriters to tell me what their way of repairing these machines are, because at the end of the day, there is not one single proper way. There are do's and don'ts, of course. I mean, you've got to keep that in mind. But whether you use isopropyl alcohol, mineral spirits, or you use lighter fluid, what is your preference? I'm eager to know. I like isopropyl alcohol because, first of all, it's cheap to get. This is a dollar store bottle. You see, $3.50 from the Dollarama here up in Canada. And I've had that bottle for a year now, and you don't use much of it. Lighter fluid is more expensive. You want to get a bottle of Roncinol or what's that other brand? These days you're looking at $10 up here, so I'm not sure if that's worth it. It's effective, but not any more effective than isopropyl alcohol. Mineral spirits are not as fumey as isopropyl alcohol, but again, keep in mind that it is still a chemical and you want to use it in a ventilated area. And that also brings me to the point that I think I already put this in the comments, a bit of a disclaimer. If you work on your own typewriters, you do it at your own risk, right? I mean, I'd like to think of myself as someone somewhat professional, but at the end of the day, I've taught myself on how to do this. My way is not always the right way. It's, for me, an effective way of doing it, but there might be other ways that are more effective. And you've got to be careful. These machines, sometimes I've got typewriters here that are from the 19th century still. And working on those machines, you've got to be careful because at this point, they're 125 plus years old. And, there's screws in there that have not been unscrewed in 100 years. And the chances of you stripping those are pretty big. That said, however, there's also an irrational fear of people thinking that typewriters are very fragile the older they become. You see a lot of antique stores and they'll have a sticker on there that says "Do not touch" because it's an old machine. Typewriters now, honestly, aside from the plastic and rubber parts, are just the same shape if they're well maintained as they were when they were new, right? You don't have these typewriters don't wear out in the same way that I don't know, electronic appliances do, cars do, clothes do, right? But anyways, yeah. So, like I said, I hope these videos, they are helpful for you in repairing your machines. I've been in a bit of a hiatus, but I'm aiming to return more actively back to the typewriter community to help everybody out in, with their typewriters and any service they might require and any assistance they might need. Hey, it's a beautiful community and it's a beautiful machine. And they deserve the attention and the respect for their historical and practical contributions, right? I realize I'm rambling a bit just because there's nothing really too entertaining going on right now, so what I might just do is keep quiet and let you enjoy this. Actually, I will explain a thing here I'm going to do. I'm going to start cleaning the type bars as a first component in the machine that's going to be dealt with some chemical. What you want to do is you want to get your shop rag. Absolutely make sure that you cover up those plastic keys, because if you let isopropyl alcohol sit on plastic, it can take off the character, the face value, whatever you want to call it. So put a little shop rag like this and flatten those type bars, and then I'm going to take out these components, just put them over here. There we go. Like I said. And I've got the right stuff for it as well. I've got magnetic dishes for those parts. Somewhere. Can't find them. So, isopropyl alcohol, what you want to do is just a little bit in the bottom. What I do is, tin foil's on there. I don't even take the tin foil off. I just poke a hole in it, because then I can regulate a little bit more what goes in there. And what you put in, you put a little bottom. That's it. You just, not even half an inch. There we go. So, first things first, what you want to do is you want to grab a brush that you dedicate to isopropyl alcohol, okay? This is going to be my alcohol brush. Okay, dab it in there, avoid all the components you don't want this to get on, and put it on your type bar or your type bar slugs liberally, okay? Frankly, if you're very inclined, like these keys are pretty clean. But you can also use acetone. Acetone, of course, acetone you'll find in nail polish remover. So if you don't like the smell of pure acetone, buy nail polish remover and use that, because that will take it right off. I've got multiple I've got a steel brush and I've got a brass brush here, or whatever this is. What you want to do is you want to establish which one of those is the softer one. You don't want the most abrasive. I find that the brass brush is too abrasive. A metal brush is abrasive too. So you go up in stages when you clean type slug. This is an important lesson, okay? When you clean type slugs in a typewriter, you want to go up in stages of hardness based on how it's getting along, okay? The reason I'm saying that is because the typeface on these machines can get damaged if you get in there with something too abrasive. If you start using a brass brush and start scrubbing away at it, I damage the typeface. You don't want to do that, right? So first thing you want to do is, I say, like, put a little isopropyl alcohol on the slugs and just let it sit for a bit. And then grab the softest brush you've got and start with that. And again, I'll put it in shift lock so the basket stays in its place. Okay. And you grab another rag. I'm going to use this one for my ink rabs. This is the dirt rag. You just start wiping that off. Make sure you get within the serifs and the open spaces of the characters on those slugs, because if you've got a plugged O or an A or an E slug, that's going to show up on the page, right? Now I've got a dirty C key. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab one of my picks, and I've got this one, but I've got more, the different angle one, whatever you want. And you use that pick carefully and just scrape out the dirt in those slugs. The H is also dirty. The O is full of dirt. There we go. Anything else? P has some dirt in it. And don't do it too hard. Just scrape out that dirt. Put a bit more isopropyl alcohol on the slugs. There we go. Go to town one more time. Now, if this doesn't do it, and it does happen, then you go up a step, then you go up a grade, then you go to the next harshest material. In my case, that's a steel brush. And you would try that, but I don't have to because I'm already getting shiny keys. Also, keep in mind that if you're going for shine, make sure that your type slugs have, nickel plating or chrome on it, because the thing is, if you just start rubbing away at it, with something abrasive, you can peel that top layer off as well. You can do damage to type slugs, right? So you want to make sure that you do this with some consideration. Like I said, they're not fragile. They're just, you want to make sure you don't damage any of the elements. Okay. Now, have a look. I don't know if you can see that. Those are clean type slugs. Those are not clean type bars. They're clean type slugs. So the type bars are going to be the next thing. We're going to take every single one. So what we're going to do is I still have my shop rag underneath here. I'm going to grab my alcohol brush. And we're going to dab the type bars and a little bit on the segment, like you can be liberal. That's okay. Just make sure that your shop rag's underneath it, and that there's nothing underneath that the typewriter is sitting on. If it was to leak on it, would damage it, because I'm using a textured faux wood grain table, and you'll find there's a whole spot that's missing that texture, and that's because I accidentally didn't have any cover underneath the machine when I was putting acetone down the segment, and I took off a layer on my table. So there we go. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to go through every single type slug or every type bar, and we're going to just wipe her down. And like I said, if you want to do a thorough job, in this case, you'd remove all those type bars, and then you can put them through a vibratortron, what do you call those? I've got one of those. It's a uses vibrations to clean metal and soapy water. Ultrasonic cleaner, that's it. Excuse me. Now, if you come across a type bar that's a little sluggish, these are also the moment where you can put a little dab of oil down the slot in the segment and see if you can work that loose, if that is the source of the issue. If you got a bent key lever or bad linkage or something like that, of course that's not going to rectify it. But because on the Smith Corona, by the way, on a side note, the key levers are a two-part system, and they are hinged here underneath the keyboard itself as well, so they're not just a single key lever that goes through the machine. Smith Corona, when they were designing these machines, if you a conventional typewriter, if you press a key, it goes down on an angle like this. And Smith Corona, they wanted to come up with a system whereby it doesn't pivot. So they created a secondary hinge over here. And there's a rod that runs through it. And then there is a bell crank that goes down to the actual key lever. And it's hinged on or pivoting on that as well. And it allows the keys to move up and down without that pivot. But because of that, you can't just pull up the key lever, the type bar. You've got to press the key and then work your way up. You've got to press the key. On some machines, you can just pull the key, type bar up, but on this machine, on Smith Coronas in general, you can't. So just keep that in mind if you start tugging on them. It kind of locks them in place when they're resting. Going through this, what I thought was rust turned out to just be dirt. So these type bars are actually cleaning up very nicely. Okay, and there you have it. There we go. Oh, let's see a little speck there that we have to get rid of. No, might be a little corrosion. What I do in this case is I just use my shop rag, and we're going to take a little acetone to it, and again, just breaking the foil. So you just use your pick to perforate that, and instead of taking the whole tin foil off, you've got better regulation on how much comes out of that bottle. Yeah, that's a little corroded. I think that's the only two though. Yeah, that's not too bad. Oh, see that one being a bit slow there. So we're going to use some of our sewing machine oil. And just a drop is all you need. Don't even squeeze it, just let it come out. And just work it. There we go. Okay, so the Y is sticking again. Grab your bottle. Don't squeeze. Just hold it above it. There you go. One drop is all it will do. And you can also do, if you're really tedious, if you want to use your screwdriver, put a little oil on that, and just work your way. You hear that noise difference? So N, M, comma. You hear how there seems to be a hesitancy there? Could be a sign of a bent linkage. And these are very, very flimsy linkages, so I would not be surprised. See if we can figure out the issue there. Yeah, that's bent. Let me see if I can straighten that with a screwdriver. Let's see. A little bit better. I think it will do just fine. Okay, anyways, so that's pretty much going through the segment. We'll clean it up a little bit from underneath as well. However, I think this is my time to cut this video, and I will be back probably tomorrow or Monday with because today's Saturday, with another video as we continue on this process. I'm using live stream for those that are interested to watch in the now, but of course this is going to be archived as well. So if you come back to watching at later dates, welcome. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, all the things you do on YouTube, and I'll be back. All right.